Hello, everybody. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're watching this ridiculous podcast. Welcome aboard. Great to have you here. Edgy Tim back again with, well, kind of know him, you love him for whatever reason. I don't get it either, but he's our guy. He's Matt Leng joining us, and great to have him aboard, Matt. And again, interesting week, interesting round two, which we will certainly get into and dig in a little bit. And just glad to be back. And boy, if it didn't feel like November up until today, it's feeling as we record this on Wednesday night, Matt. It is definitely November weather.
Yeah, and if it was colder, we would probably be seeing some snowflakes. But this is what we're going to get. It'll probably clear up on Friday and Saturday. It may not. I don't know. I still think we're going to get a dash of something down the road, and this is good. This is the good time of the year. We're going to find out what's going to happen, and we got a lot of things to talk about. We got a great guest, and I'm back with my orange. You know what I'm saying? The Illini had an off week, so I took an off week, and so I'm ready to go.
Off week of what? You're always wearing.
They had a bye week. The Illini had a bye week.
I thought you meant you took a week off of wearing orange. No. I'm like, no, you didn't.
No, I'm back with the orange. I'm back.
Have you washed that? Have you washed that sweatshirt?
Yes, I have washed this.
Okay, just checking. Checking for your health and well-being and those around you. I had to ask.
I'm shaved up. I'm ready to go, man. I'm ready to go. So.
All right, enough of this nonsense. Are you ready to bring in our guest?
Yes.
All right. Well, introduce who our guest is over part of the stream. You're going to hear our guest just fine. We're having a little technical issue here, which we apologize in advance. But Matt, bring in our guest.
Well, we've talked a lot about great coaches that that I've had a chance to get to know and meet. And our tonight's guest is an individual that I haven't coached against, but he's been nice enough to let me come out to practices over the years. When I coached at Fisher, when I was at Havana, we were able to battle against one another. So we did go toe to toe, and I was a duck, and he kind of racked up some points against me. I couldn't stop his counter tray, but Coach Mark Dodd from Bismarck is with us. One of the distinguished coaches in the Vermilion County area. And, Mark, we're just glad to have you here. And, you've had a great storied career, and now you're in the quarterfinals. And, thanks for joining the Third and Lang podcast.
Well, hey, thanks for asking me. I'm telling you, being with you two guys is a kind of a treat after sitting out in a cold, freezing rain for 2.5 hours with a bunch of teenage boys. So this is kind of a treat for me. Thanks.
Yeah, but Coach, I got to imagine it's also a really good feeling to be out there. Are you starting to get that wow, this thing's really starting to narrow down kind of vibe, or not yet?
Oh yeah. I tell you, we've been knocked on the door a whole bunch of years, and it's kind of like it's always something kind of thing. So we finally have kind of broken through a little bit. So we're feeling really good at this point.
So I'm gonna try out my Southern Illinois University math skills here. So please bear with me. I have you down so far for 18 seasons. Is that correct?
At Bismarck, yes.
Okay. 18 seasons at Bismarck, and we'll see if I can get anywhere close to the overall record. I have you as of right now 143 and 44.
You'd know more than I would. I don't know.
Okay, we'll go with that. I got it off the IHSA, so we'll go with that. So 143 and 44 in 18 seasons, obviously 11-0 this season. I believe that is the best record in school history. Am I correct?
11 wins, yes. I think that's the best season.
Yep, and one more win would get you into the semifinal for the first time in school history. But we obviously know you have a lot of work to get done before then. But again, all going great. Last time you were in the made this round, I think you ended the season 10-2 back in 2014. And again, just congratulations, Coach, on a terrific run so far, and hopefully more to come.
Yeah, we're this team has overachieved, I think, by far. We really didn't know exactly what we had, but this is one of the hardest working kids, group of kids we've had, and probably one that's improved the most throughout the season. And it's just been a fun group for us.
Mark, before I throw you over to Matt, the one thing you mentioned was not sure what you had. Has there been a point this year where you got to the point where it kind of clicked and you said, you know what, this might be a little something special, or have you not even gotten to that point yet?
Week 7, when we played at Moments, I think they were the clear-cut favorite, I think, to win the Vermilion Valley Conference preseason, and I saw them in a 7-on-7. I saw the size of their linemen this summer when we went over to Clifton Central, and my gosh, they were intimidating. They were huge, and that's the one thing our team isn't, is we don't have a lot of size. I think the biggest kid I have is about 210 pounds, and so that's kind of a thorn that we have in our side. But so I think when we went there at Moments week 7, and we were, we went to halftime with a 35-7 lead. I think that's kind of the turning point where the kids, the coaches, we kind of went after that game, and we we're kind of like, we might have something special here.
Matt?
Hey, Coach, I'm going to kind of just stop everything and kind of go back to your whole coaching career. And obviously, you're having a lot of success at Bismarck. I mean, I had you on my speed dial, talk about wing tee football and all that. And I'll get into that later. But let's just talk a little bit about the journey. You started at Richmond Burton. Maybe you started somewhere else before that. But Richmond Burton, then you came down to Vermilion County to Danville, and now you're at Bismarck. How have you kind of developed and created and grown and matured and learned over the years? What has taken place in all those years of the Mark Dodd journey? Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, I tell you, I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it the way I did it. I spent 1 year as a JV football coach in a small school in Denver, Iowa. And my wife got a promotion to bring us to Illinois, and I just wanted to coach so bad. I didn't care where I ended up, and I was aggressive enough and maybe silly enough to follow the 1992 Richmond Burton State Championship team, and I jumped into that when kind of by accident, and I took over that, and wow. I was in way over my head, and I really didn't have the time, to learn under a high school coach for very long. I really just didn't have that. And so, wow, I just didn't, I made so many mistakes, and I had to learn everything the hard way. And I tried to do everything myself. And, luckily I survived. I survived at Richmond in my 7 years there. I did win one conference championship, and the one thing I did have is I knew I didn't know, and I had a big thirst for knowledge. I probably spent half my paycheck on, coaching videos and clinics, and I just knew I had to learn fast, and I did. I went to everything, and I bought all those VHS tapes, as I know you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
Championship Productions and all those other things, and I just studied and studied and studied, and I bent the ear out of every coach I could find that, knew more than me, which was pretty much everybody. And so then I did come down to Danville, and I tried the big school thing, and learned some hard lessons there as well, and I got fired, and I got out of coaching and thought, maybe this was it. And I tell you what, when you think the worst day of your life, the day you get fired from coaching, and you think you're a failure, and you think like, I'm not any good. And you look back on it a few years later, and you find out, wow, that was the best day of my life, because I got out of coaching high school football. And what I did was I went and coached youth football, and I coached my 2 sons. And for 2 years I did that, and I literally just fell in love with coaching again and being around kids. And we were lucky enough that we bought a house in Bismarck, and I was coaching in Bismarck where our kids went to school. And then the job came open, and I was here, and I was already like invested in the community. And then it was just a blessing that I was here and ready, and they needed a coach, and here I am 18 years later, and struggled the first couple years, kind of getting things turned around, but it's just been awesome ever since.
It's an interesting path. There's no doubt. Yeah, that is not the typical path, Coach. There's no doubt.
No, I
about
wouldn't.
it.
I wouldn't really recommend it either.
Oh,
And I'm
oh.
certainly not bragging about it. I would. I know I have a son, my youngest son, Dawson. He's a junior in college right now, and he wants to go into coaching and wants to be a teacher in high school. And I'm telling him the very same thing. I said, don't be in a hurry to be a head coach. Do not rush into that. You go find, you latch on to somebody, and I'm not telling him to latch on to me. I'm telling him to latch on to somebody. Go coach freshman ball, go coach JV ball, go, be a coordinator.
Yeah.
And really know what you're doing when that time comes, if you want to be a head coach, because people don't realize, I never realized early, the headaches and all the behind the scene things that take away your time and make you lose sleep at night.
Coach, I gotta tell you this story. I'm sure you've heard it, and if I've told it to you before. I apologize for repeating this, but it's going to go into my next question. My first year as a head coach at Fisher, we had won our first game, and my second game as a head coach was over at Bismarck Henning. And it's the only time in my coaching career where I looked at my watch in the first quarter and thought, how in the hell am I going to get out of here? I was going up against the likes of Tom Johnson. At the end of the first quarter, it was 7-0, and I looked right at my watch because I thought I was going to get beat 55-0. And I can remember my assistant coach, Ben Durgis, at the time said, just keep doing what you're doing. Don't deviate from the plan. And by the graces of the football gods, I walked out of there with a 9-7 win over Tom Johnson, in which he kicked a field goal at the end, and it went wide right, Bobby Bowden style. My point is that, all these great coaches I've ran into have had some sort of impact on me. What is your Mount Rushmore? If you had 3 or 4 guys that had an impact on you over these years that have kind of created you and made you into this coach, who would those guys be?
Oh, wow. I read a lot of books on Vince Lombardi, and I was born in Milwaukee, so I was kind of born into being a Green Bay Packers fan. And so I read and studied everything about it. And here's the like, I'll look back and say, like, the stupidity of me. So when I started as a young coach, it kind of felt like, I had to be like Vince Lombardi. I had to be this authoritarian, guy who yelled and screamed. And not that was really him, but I just kind of felt I had to, play this role of this guy, because when I was young, back in the 1980s when I played football, almost every coach back then was, gruff and mean and a yeller and all this kind of stuff, and so I just kind of felt like that's what I had to be, and so I tried that for my first few years, and I tried, and what I realized is that was all fake. And it really just wasn't me. That's not my personality. I'm my father's son. My father was a YMCA guy, and my father was a teacher. Like, he wasn't a teacher, but he was a teacher of things, and he was a great role model for me. And my father used humor a lot, and that's really what my gift is, honestly, from him. And so it took me a few years of trying to fake my way through being what I thought a good head coach was supposed to be. When I finally figured it out, which took a long time, but I finally figured it out, is like, I'm just better at just being myself. And I can always get good assistants around me to like do those things that I'm not probably as good at, I can get the guy that yells and screams and fires everybody up. I can get the guy that, maybe the little bit more disciplinarian guy, and I can be me. And once I started doing that, that's really when the success started to happen. So although I admired, Vince Lombardi and those types of coaches because they were so technically sound and so driven. I really just had to settle into being like what I was good at. And that was building relationships with kids and letting them kind of into like knowing me and realizing like, Hey, I think he's a pretty good dude. And that was really what worked best for me.
Was that the or is that one of the hardest parts of finding that success, is kind of balancing X's and O's versus personality versus, being the mean, rough, tough guy versus getting to know kids? It sounds like you kind of figured that out, and gotta imagine that's probably a big key to your success so far, I would imagine.
Well, the thing is that, I teach sophomores. And so I was real insistent, that I needed to teach either freshmen or sophomores in high school because I need to get to know every kid in the school before they're juniors and seniors. I recruit the kids out of my classes, and I get to know them. And once you get to know them, you kind of see how they tick, and they get to know you too. And then, that's really big in a small school because sometimes you just find those kids that are kind of lost, and you open the door for them and say, hey, here's something that, like, maybe you might want to try this. And I recruit the heck out of them. And I recruit the heck out of kids even in our program because, you get a young kid, a freshman or sophomore that comes out and maybe they're not the best player as a young player. But you still have to keep recruiting those kids because, there's a lot of things pulling at them these days. So those are the things that I feel like I've done pretty well. And here's the thing I tell my coaches all the time when, we have a kid that maybe he's not that talented as a young player. And I was like, hey, they do grow up. They do grow up. We'll let them grow, let them mature, let them develop. And I just can't tell you. We have a great story right now. We have a kid. He's my starting center, and he's 140 pounds. And this young guy, when he was a freshman, he came in and he was 130 pounds. And he was a kid. I tell you, he was slow and he was small. And I remember playing freshman ball, and we were like, wow, he's a really great kid, but there's just no place for him to play. We tried him in the backfield and he was too slow. We tried him on the line and he was too small. And it's just like, man, it's just a shame. He'll just never be able to play. And he stuck with it and didn't get much bigger, but he did develop. And, we time our kids. We have a great speed program, and he's gotten much faster. And what we didn't realize is he's gotten much stronger and he's gotten much tougher. And so, we're going into this playoff game with a 140-pound center who's tough as nails, and a kid that we never would have guessed would have ever been able to play varsity football. And he's the anchor of everything we do. So that's the cool thing about doing what we do in a small school, where you just have these stories like these. We have these kids all the time, and that's really the fun of it.
You mentioned the relationships and building up those relationships. How do you get numbers? How do you retain numbers? How do you attract those kids, maybe eighth graders coming in freshman year? How do you bring them into the program and keep them into the program besides just getting to know those kids? Are there other things that maybe you've thrown into the mix a little bit to kind of appeal to them a little bit more? Give us your plan and how you continue to keep the numbers up and maybe even build them up a little more.
Well, I think that if you provide something good, I think that's what kids are attracted to. And I really think kids and parents, they really do appreciate a disciplined, well-run system of anything. And I think that's what we really have provided. It's not I got to watch my language here, but it's very structured. It's very organized. And I think that we don't overdo it. Our summer is, I think, very, very reasonable. We go on the field on Tuesday mornings for 2 hours, and then we lift 2 other days a week. And so we make sure our kids know that, hey, if you go on vacation, go on vacation. Okay, that's what summers are for. If you're gonna go play basketball, go play basketball. You're gonna have your baseball stuff, go do that. And we're here every Tuesday. You know that. If you can't be here, well, that's all right. But we're here. We have our camp, and we try to make sure that they know at the beginning that we like you here on the camp at the end of July. But we try to keep it in perspective, knowing kids are busy, and we don't want to dominate their summer or anything. But hey, we're here, and then when we are here, we work, and we do not waste their time. It's very much like we start on time, we end on time, and they put in their 2 hours of work or their hour and a half of lifting and speed work, and then we're done, and then go enjoy your day. And so I think that has helped a lot, and we've drawn in kids from every sport now have joined right in with our training. And I think, and this is the first year now we've actually gotten in our 7th and 8th grade young kids into a special session too. And I think that's going to be huge in the years to come, because now we're really kind of I think doing it the right way and drawing the younger kids in for the first time. We're probably a little behind the game in that one, but we're real happy with that.
Coach, I was going to ask you a little bit, you've been a wing tee guy, but you have also kind of like, spread it out. Like you go to different spread formations, you do a lot of shifting. And when you do that, and I guess talk about that, how that kind of came about. And then I've always been impressed with you always have the big names. You have it right now. You have a young kid, a good running back, and the Parrish kid. But, to me, I've always been kind of fascinated by your quarterback play. I think with what you do in terms of the wing tee, and then you kind of spread it out and what have you, that quarterback has to be just laser focused. He has to be an extension of the coach. Talk a little bit about that transformation in terms of the wing tee to kind of spread things out, to coming back to the wing tee and how you shift everything. And then talk about that quarterback. Like what makes a good quarterback? And you've had some nannies there over the years.
Yeah, we have. And well, here's the thing. First of all, you have to, with us, it's like we don't just teach. I don't want my kids to be robots. There's you teach a kid like, okay, well, if like for instance, defensively, okay, when you see this formation, we're going to be in this and this and this and this. Okay, well, what if the other team does something different? What if the team adds motion? What if the team adds a shift, right? Well, we're really, really particular about, okay, this is our base, and then we expand from there. So same is true with quarterbacks. I want our quarterbacks to be students of the game. So yes, we're going to teach our base offenses. We're going to teach our base reads. And then, okay, now as a quarterback, now you got to be a student. Okay. Now we have to look at, okay, what are we going to look at as far as the defenses? All right. Here's your checklist pre-snap. Okay. You're going to count the safeties. You're going to count the box. You're going to look at our number one receiver and look at the matchup. Okay. So here's your list. And now here's your list of audibles that you can check to. And I want my quarterback to have in his toolbox of not a whole offense, but here's your 5 or 6 checkdowns that you can go, and I'm going to trust you to, like, here you go. You need to make Coach Dodd look smart if I call a horrible play. Okay. And this is your task.
Sure.
Okay? And you need to do this. All right. And we joke about it, but we also have this thing, I call it quarterback school. And we do this on Tuesday nights after practice. I have the kids over at my house, but usually the quarterback and receivers, usually 5 or 6 kids. And they come and we look at film, and my wife feeds them, and we study film. Sometimes it's of the upcoming opponent, but sometimes it's of last week's game, or even past games of different things that they could see and different calls that they could make. And it's kind of a relaxed kind of thing, but that goes a long way in just teaching them football, and in a relaxed way and kind of a casual thing. But it's just like, okay, here's a particular defense. Now, what are they taking away, and then what are they offering here? What would be a good call to make here? And luckily, my kids they enjoy that kind of stuff, and of course, it educates them. And and sometimes, they come off the field and they've called something different than I called. And and sometimes they come over to me and they're not even sure if I'm happy or sad. And I tell them, like, okay, what did you see and why'd you call that? And if they give me a good educated answer, whether it turned out right or wrong, if they tell me the right answer, it's like, okay, well, I'll live with it because they made a good decision, even if it didn't work out perfectly.
Yeah, it's trust. It really is.
And also too, if you wanted to, that's a life lesson too. I mean, that's a win-win. Yeah. You're teaching things, and I think that's great, Mark. I mean, I've seen that over the years because I know that you are doing some not complicated things, but I mean, it looks complicated when you're in a trips and a 2x2, and then you crunch into a single wing or a wing T and all that. And I know the quarterback play is pretty stellar out there. You've had some really good ones over the years.
Well, and when you put your career in the hands of a 17-year-old kid, it's
kind of rolling the dice if you think about it.
You really are. You really are. And again, we have great kids, and these kids, it's important to them, and they want to do well, and that's big. And we get kids that are, I really call them pleasers. They're parented really well, and they come to school every day. They come to practice every day. We don't have issues like that. And if I say, hey, we need to have extra time on this day, they're going to give me that extra time, and they're going to make the most of it. So I'm really, really lucky in that way.
Coach, fill us in on this team this year. Give us some of the names to highlight, names that we need to know going into this quarterfinal game.
It starts with believe it or not, our 2 All-State players, which I think was announced today, but
got released today.
We were just really thrilled. Evan Parrish is our running back and inside linebacker. Just a phenomenal talent and straight A kid. Just couldn't be more pleased with the season he has. Very jet quick, good speed, and just a complete student of the game. In my whole career, 30 years, he's probably has the best closing speed of any linebacker I've ever coached. If he gets you in his sights, man, you're going to get tackled. And for me to say that is a pretty big compliment because I've coached a lot of really good ones. Chaz Du Bois has been my wingback, and he's my number 1 receiver. He's also an All-State kid, which we've never actually had 2 in the same season. So I guess that's a product of having good players and having a successful season, I guess. So, but he's had 2 remarkable seasons back to back. I think he had 19 touchdowns last year, and this is last year he was with our All-State receiver Aiden Ingram, who was phenomenal and is playing at Culver Stockton right now in Missouri. So. And Chaz was our number 2 receiver last year. And so he's kind of stepped into that role, and we didn't use him nearly enough or nearly as much this year just because Evan Parrish had such a good running season. So Chaz didn't quite have the, gaudy stats that he had a year ago, but he pretty much won us the first round game. We completed 7 passes, and he caught all 7 of them, including a touchdown with 38 seconds to go. To win the game. And so he also caught a touchdown to give us the lead in our round 2 game versus Seneca. So those 2 guys are kind of special, and that makes us kind of dangerous because we do have the big running threat as well as the big receiving threat. Anderson Thomas is our left-handed quarterback, and again, has been very, 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 very steady for us, runs the offense, and can sling it pretty well. Can run it when he needs to. Biggest play in the game against Seneca was a 4th and 7. And we ran a play that broke down. It was designed to go to Du Bois, and he pulled it down and scrambled and ran it and got a first down. And then that was our drive that we did score the go-ahead touchdown. So those 3 guys have been really stellar all season. But the key of our team is really up front. And that's the biggest improvement we've had over the last 2 years. And again, we're not very big, but our guys up front have just have just been outstanding, and Coach David Robertson is our line coach, and he's done amazing things with these kids.
Coach, this is the time of the show where I'm going to really get into some hard-hitting questions. So we think back to the 80s when you played, and now we're in the 2000s. Let's talk music, okay? Like
here we
what
go.
kind of rock music? I mean, if you could be a rock singer for a rock band, what band would you sing for, and who would you like? Would you take? Whose place would you take? I mean, give me some details here, man.
Now, how do you know he'd be a rock star?
Or country,
you don't know that.
Or hip hop, or rap.
You don't know that.
I
was listening to disco today, and I had a blast. I had an absolute blast, and I'm about as much a rock guy as anybody. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty hard hitting. You're right.
No pressure.
Hey, Coach Dodd, that was my 60 minutes meet the press question. Okay, so I'm just letting you know that was the big one right there. Okay.
Okay. Well, if in my days of like lifting weights and like getting really down, it would be it'd be like we'd be hitting some Metallica up there.
There you go. Yeah.
But in my college days, Bon Jovi was pretty good. I wouldn't mind being John Bon Jovi during his heyday.
It was
good hair and lots of good looking fans.
It was the hard enough rock where the guys could listen, but the girls were there as well. It was a perfect mix.
I'm thinking you're right on that one.
That's good. Coach, do you have any college coaches, NFL coaches that you kind of admire to or look up to, or it's like, hey man, they're groundbreaking, or I like them. I know for me over the years, like when I was younger, I mean, I liked Tom Landry when I was growing up, and then I liked Bill Parcells, and then I liked Bill Walsh. I mean, I just could go on and on and on with the whole coaching thing, and I fell in love with that. So what about with you?
I don't really fall in love with any one coach. I respect a lot of programs, and I respect a lot what the Iowa program does, how they coach, and they're so precise. I think they get it done with a lot less talent, and I know that they're not flashy or, they're not elite year after year, but I do follow them, and I still get amazed that they can still compete at a pretty high level without having all the, top recruits in the country.
Yeah, no question.
So I kind of get impressed by that. I don't know. Those are the kind of programs I get kind of attracted to. Kansas State. Chris Kleiman is a kid I went to school with in high school, and when he got the job at Kansas State, obviously I was really thrilled and proud of him. He was a teammate of mine in high school, and
wow.
And so I really followed him, and so I kind of like I like what he does just because I don't know, he's a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I just watch it. I really just watch college football as a fan.
Yeah.
And then I steal things when I see something really cool.
No,
I really don't have the time, and I don't have the time to watch it until after Thanksgiving, and then it's almost over. So I really don't get a chance to enjoy it because I'm watching film every Saturday.
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about that, man. I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I my favorite part of the year is the bowl time, because that's when obviously our season is done and kind of wrapped up, and then I can actually sit down and really enjoy 2-3 games in a day. And I'm that guy. And during bowl season, guys, I'm that guy. I'll watch the Wednesday 1 o'clock college game, bowl game. I'll watch it. I'm that guy. So I hear you.
You'll watch the Little Caesars Bowl from Detroit, Michigan.
I'm all about it. I'll watch it. Might not be great, but I'll watch it. I'm the one guy I'm the viewership, I guess. So
Coach Dodd, real quick, since you are kind of a player's coach, maybe a little on the humor side, your banter and your relationship building with your players is probably top notch. You're a great teacher. What lead actor is going to play you in a football movie?
Holy cow. Let's
See, now
see.
the mind is going everywhere because we can't see you. So
Exactly.
now you really
Well, then it'd probably have to be Brad Pitt because he's a pretty good-looking dude, I would guess.
There you
He's probably
go.
going to have to do it. Now that you can't see me.
Yep. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Hey, Coach.
Then maybe my wife would even watch it.
I don't know. This might be an option. Every coach might want to not be seen now. So we better be careful. I have to offer this to everybody. Chicago Christian, what's on the bulletin board? What do you guys need to be concerned with going into that game?
They're talented. They're pretty big up front. They got 3 pretty good receivers. Quarterback can sling it, and their running back runs real hard. Like obviously no accident. They're our opponent. So we feel the strength of our team is our defense. It's been there all year. It's been our most consistent part of our game. Coach Mark Dodd has done an amazing job. Our kids are so well prepared. We stood out in the rain for an hour and 20 minutes today, going over everything, and our kids were fired up to do it. It was awesome. And so obviously they're going to be really good. Hopefully, we feel like we're pretty good too. And, it's going to be a good physical game. I hope the weather is not a factor. It doesn't look like it's going to be.
That's a 5:00 at night game, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
I think all this rain's supposed to clear out by tomorrow. I think late morning tomorrow. So hopefully that's a long enough time. You should be okay.
We would hope so. I just want it to be a football game between two good teams, and our guys are excited, and they know what's on the line, and I don't think at least I don't sense that they're nervous about it. I just think they see an opportunity ahead of them, and they know that for us to win, it's got to be a physical and fast type of game that we've played all season.
Your DC is one of your former players, right?
Yeah, he was a fullback on my very first team. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that. And because I was a Fisher, and I remember. I mean, he was stellar, man. I mean, he was rock solid.
Yeah, he was a great player. Ended up playing at Eureka. Yeah, and he's done a great job. He's now our new athletic director. So
wow,
there you go.
Yep,
that's so awesome to see that happen with kids. And I know one of my former players that I coached a long time ago, Tony Foster, was on your staff, and now he's a principal.
He's our elementary principal. Michael Grant is my pretty much my offensive coordinator by title, and he coaches our JV. He's our scout team quarterback every week. He was my first quarterback on my first team there in 2007. So it's awesome when these guys come back, and so Michael Grant is our junior high PE teacher. So there's a good voice I have in there. Of course, Mark Dodd is now my defensive coordinator and our athletic director. So he's also runs all of our strength program. I got a great guy in Nathan West, who was a head coach in Georgetown and an assistant in Westville. And he's come over, and he's our speed guy, and he coaches our defensive line. And Dave Robertson coaches my offensive line. And so I've just been so lucky to get great people on staff.
You got Nathan West on your staff. You got a good staff, man. I mean, Nathan did some great things over there at Georgetown. That is not an easy place to win, and you got great assistant coaches. I can tell you right now, you got a good staff, Coach. That's awesome.
Absolutely. I'm very, very lucky. Not sure I'd keep doing it if I didn't have these guys with me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Coach, again, we appreciate you taking time, and hopefully next time we'll get your video straightened out so we can see the Brad Pitt lookalike. Mark.
Well, it's probably better off this way. You probably get better viewers this way.
Yeah, well, it's okay. Hey, Coach, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks very much,
Matt, and
Mark.
I certainly appreciate it. And best of luck on Saturday, okay?
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
All right, we appreciate it. So, again, Mark Dodd taking off, and we're going to knock him out of the room just like that. And, again, glad to have him. Unfortunately, like we said, video for whatever reason isn't working on his end, but hopefully we'll get it figured out. We'll have him back another time to talk.
Good football coach, great English teacher, very well respected in that community, and he has been an amazing person for me because I have gotten some stuff from him on how to coach and teach and run a football program. And during the COVID year, when we played 3 football games over at Havana, he begged me to play a game, and I couldn't play it on a Saturday because I was going to have my kids down there. And he's like, I'll drive over on a Friday. He drove all the way over to Havana, Illinois on a Friday afternoon to play a Friday night game against me. And it was a haul. And I kept it 20-14 at halftime. We were down by 6. And then the second half was a different story.
All right, we're on 40 minutes and counting, so we're gonna switch gears and we're gonna start breaking down some quarterfinals. Ready for this?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go to 8-man. 8-man is in actually the semifinal round, which we need to remember they're technically a round ahead of us. But so here are the results from the quarterfinals. So Pawnee walloped St. Anne 64-24 to advance, and then Amboy defeated Martinsville 32-20. So on that side of the bracket, the semifinal is Pawnee taking on Amboy. Pawnee will be hosting Saturday at 4 p.m. On the opposite side of the bracket, Matt, Polo, all over West Carroll, 66-0 to advance. So the Polo Marcos advance to the semifinals. They will take on Milledgeville. Milledgeville is 16-12 win over Ridgewood. So again, on Saturday, 1 o'clock at Milledgeville, it's Polo taking on Milledgeville. And again, Matt, any thoughts in the 8A semifinals?
Well, we have our two favorites and the 2 teams that we know are the best in 8-man, and that is Amboy and Polo. So Polo, has kind of been lighting the world on fire. Milledgeville, watch out for them. They drove all the way down and beat Pat Elder's team in the bowl at Cambridge. I was not expecting that. And, Pat told me about these defensive ends that Milledgeville has. So Milledgeville and Polo may be a toss-up, but right now I think all signs are pointing towards Amboy and Polo in the state championship.
All right, let's move on to 1A. So here are the results in the quarters in 1A. Galena, again, terrific win for Galena, the 12 seed. They get a 33-6 win over Ottawa Marquette to advance. Leroy, all over Rockford Lutheran, 53-29. Lena, a 44-14 win over Stockton, and Gibson City, Melvin Sibley, 28-0, shutting out Sterling Newman Central Catholic. Again, in the lower part of the 1A bracket. Althoff Catholic, again, with a 43-21 win over Carrollton to advance. They will take on KZ Westfield, a 16-0 win over Brown County. Calhoun, a 14-6 win over Cesar Valier. And finally, Camp Point, 40-0 win over Cumberland. So again, Camp Point still very much alive in the quarters. So here's your quarterfinal matchups. Galena on the road at 1 seed Leroy, Saturday, 1 o'clock. Number 3 seed Gibson City on the road at Lena. That is Saturday at 2 o'clock kickoff. KZ Westfield, the 4 seed on the road at Althoff, Saturday at 2. And then finally, Calhoun on the road at Camp Point Central. Actually, excuse me, that game is at Hardin Calhoun. Saturday, 4 o'clock kickoff. So, Matt, certainly some chalk there for sure in 1A, but some really, really good matchups there.
No, it's going to be great. I mean, I think we're all anticipating seeing what's going to happen in the North. I think that's going to be a really interesting game. Gibson City has to go up and take on, the team that has been the team in 1A over the last 10 years. And that's going to be interesting to see if Chad Augsburger can dial up a defense that can slow down Lena. It's going to be really interesting to see if they can take their spread game up there and beat Lena. On the flip side of that, Galena has to drive all the way down to Leroy. I'll talk more about that later. I think in the South, you got 2 completely different teams. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Were you going to say something, Tim?
No, I was just going to say, as far as the South is concerned, is the big drama still, are we going to get that semifinal matchup between Althoff and Camp Point? Is it looking more and more like that?
Yeah, well, yes and no. And I'll talk more about this in the 4 quarters and overtime, but I'll just say this. Brad Dixon he was concerned going to the Toledo-Cumberland game. He thought Toledo-Cumberland was a very, very solid formidable opponent that kind of took care of Tuscola, and he was very, very concerned. Well, they left no doubt in that game. They beat the stuffing out of Toledo, and it's going to be really interesting to see how this all works out. I'll just, there's two different. They are completely different teams now. Calhoun and Camp Point. I'll talk more about that later. Casey, can they slow down Belleville? I will say this: the all-state teams came out today. Leroy and Belleville each have 2 all-state players. So, are we going to get that collision course? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I think we got great games in 1A.
We do. All right, let's move on to 2. I'm not going to read the results and just give you the quarterfinal matchups. We'll move things along a little bit. Farmington, the 1 seed advances. They will take on 12 seed Dwight, Gardner South Wilmington, the co-op. That game is Saturday at 1 o'clock. We just got off with Mark Dodd, Bismark Henning, the 2 seed on the road at Chicago Christian Saturday at 5 p.m. So a little bit later start there. Payne, the 4 seed, they are on the road at number 1 Johnston City. That game is Saturday at 1 o'clock. And then finally, Quincy Notre Dame. Wow, look at this one. Quincy Notre Dame, the 3 seed, at Maroa Forsyth Saturday at 2 o'clock. And Matt, that is like Rock'em Sock'em Robots right there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Maroa. That's going to be a great matchup. We look forward to that. I'll just say this, Farmington kind of beat a team that you and I both kind of thought maybe was going to advance on Rockridge. And, I talked to Toby Vallis at Farmington. He's very concerned about Dwight. Dwight's a big football team. They're muscular. They're strong up front. It's going to be really interesting to see how that all unfolds and who comes out of that northern bracket. Anything can happen. And I just think it's going to be really interesting to see because you have contrasting styles. Who's playing in that second game in the north?
And hang on one second. I just dialed it back. Let me bring it up one more time. The other game in the north is going to be Dwight versus the second game is, it's Bismarck Henning, Chicago Christian.
So what I'm going to say is it's contrasting styles because Farmington is going to be diverse, spread out. Dwight is going to be very big up front. And it's the same thing with Bismarck. I mean, they're going to get off an alien ship up in Chicago and they're going to walk out there. And it's going to be a bunch of athletes. And I tell you right now.
Hang on there, big boy. They're getting off in Palos Heights. There's a big difference between
but my point
Palos
is,
Heights and Chicago.
They're going to see some athletes. And so, Bismarck, a little bit smaller, a little bit more, I don't know, just smaller. Chicago Christian's got some players.
Yeah.
I mean, for them to come down and kind of muddy that game up against Tri-Valley, from what I heard, it was a hard-fought game. I mean, Josh has a good football team. Could we see this Chicago Christian team kind of maybe be the Cinderella team out of the north and come out of there? Because they probably have the players and the playmakers to make it happen.
All right, moving on to 3A. And again, we are talking some monster quarterfinals here in a game that I was very fortunate to attend and cover last Saturday. Montini gets the win over Byron. We'll talk about that one in a minute. So Montini on the road at number 4 seed Princeton. Again, another very familiar playoff foe over the last year or two for Montini, taking on the Tigers again in Princeton. That is a Saturday 1 o'clock kickoff. The 2 seed Wilmington on the road at Dupec. That game is at Pecatonica on Saturday at 2 p.m. Nashville, the 4 seed, they advance, taking on Tolono Unity, the 9 seed, Saturday at 2. And then finally, Benton, the Rangers, the 10 seed, on the road at Monticello for a Saturday 2 o'clock kickoff. Matt, that Byron Montini game, it had horses, it had fireworks, it had everything, and then some. It was an unbelievable atmosphere, packed both sides. The entire town of Byron was there and the surrounding areas, all dressed in orange, all in camouflage. It was an amazing game. 2-point conversion stuff by Montini. half yard short of winning that game theoretically for Byron. I know I've seen Byron twice, and both times I've seen him in heartbreak and last minute games. Unbelievable. You guys know the results, so I don't need to paint that picture. But what I want to get across, and I talked about this in a couple other places, but I want to talk about it here. So what really jumped out at me and what really impressed me, Matt, was after the game. So obviously there's chaos and fireworks going off, and it's just crazy. Byron, not a lot of straggling, picked up their stuff, left the field, headed towards the buses, headed towards the locker room. So Montini, they're celebrating a little bit, and it settles down, and then a lot of the parents are on the field with the kids. So after that, media's still out there gathering interviews. First of all, you know, Caden Considine is still out there. Handful of other players are still out there. They're talking to the media. Matt, that never happens in a playoff game. Never. Absolutely never. And then after all that, and they're still out there, then about a half dozen Montini kids come back out on the field. And they go directly to the Byron guys and start talking. And Matt, this is the kind of stuff I think fans and parents really need to watch and really need to see and understand. Yeah, you can't find two more polar opposite programs in Montini and Byron, okay? I mean, it's just different parts of the state, everything. Don't have much in common, but the way these kids handled themselves, and I mean, everybody knew Byron was going for two. That there was no mystery there. You're definitely going for the win, and they did. And I give Byron all the credit in the world. And the point being, the respect that these kids showed each other afterwards was amazing. And to see that, and the Montini kid telling Caden, like, "Hey, look, you guys played as hard as any team we've played this year. Don't let anyone ever tell you guys you're not a great team, because you guys are a great team." And it was back and forth, Matt. That is, to me, that is a part of the playoff picture that sometimes never gets told, and it should get told. Because to me, it tells you some of the good that we don't always see and hear about in high school football.
I learned that a long time ago. I think kind of what you're alluding to is I learned that a long time ago from Pat Ryan from Metamora, you know, and he always told me, you know, like, make sure your kids know not necessarily to feel sorry for that other team that maybe you beat, but that there's another set of feelings going on over there. Hal Kyoto said that a lot too, you know, and he's like, not that you need to go over there and put an arm around him and say, "Hey, attaboy, oh shucks, you're going to be all right," but let's just call it how it is. These are two of the perennial top teams in the state, year in, year out, storied program, storied tradition. Yeah. I would think that these kids know that, and they are fans of one another. Okay.
Oh, they talked about it in the post game. The Byron kids talked about it and said, "Look, these are the kind of teams and the kind of games we want to play."
Exactly.
And a credit to the fans. Again, I work both sidelines. You know that. I work one side that first half. I work the other side the second half. So I heard from both sides. I didn't hear really one mention about, oh, those damn Catholic schools and they cheat and they recruit and everything else. You know what I heard? Hands down, the majority I heard was, "Edgy, they've got to seed this thing. This has got to stop." That was resounding on both sides. Other than that, it was two teams playing football.
Yeah, great. Playing to win and playing hard. Because the bottom line is, they're not going to listen to that malarkey. When it comes down to it, they're going to get in between the white lines, and they're going to give everything you have. And like you said, you would not expect anything less than Byron to go for it on the goal line at the 2-yard line for a 2-point conversion. And, you know, from talking, and I've given the Byron coaches some distance. I've talked to, you know, a couple guys, but this is still tough. This is going to take time for them to kind of absorb, chew on. I'll talk more about this later in the third quarters, but I mean, just a great classic game. I mean, I'm glad you were there, and now we move on, and you know, down to the next game that I'll talk about. Wilmington is, I tell you right now, they know that they're going to have their hands full. I mean,
they definitely know.
Coach Hoffman has a son right now that is very much a dual threat player at quarterback in Cooper Hoffman. And they've got two big receivers in Jason Diedrich and Brody Black, and they can make plays. So playmakers are going to be in full effect on Saturday during that game. And, you called this a while ago, about 3 weeks ago. Could Dubectia be a team that kind of comes out of nowhere? I don't think they've really come out of nowhere. I think they come out of one of the best areas of football there, and they have went battle toe-to-toe with some of those gritty, tough NUIC teams. They're more than battle-tested. They're more than ready. And Coach Jeff knows this over at Wilmington. This is going to be a great game.
By the way, a little plug for my radio show on 1340 WJOL, 6 to 8 on Thursday night. You can watch it live on YouTube. Jeff Rinks will be joining us, as well as Francis Laughlin from Coal City in 4A. So we'll get into that game as well. But yeah, there's just some tremendous matchups. And then Benton and Monticello, your guy at Monticello, should be a really, really good game as well.
Well, real quick, I won't elaborate too much, but I'll just tell you, Benton's playing good, and Coley's talked about that. And Nashville, they have the players. I mean, they have the players. I talked to Coach K today. I'm not going to read everything he said, but he knows that going up to Tolona Unity, Tolona Unity started that game against St. Joe with a lot of short fields. He knows he's going to have to lengthen that game, and they're going to have to play at their best. But those four teams in the South, I think they got something to say about this whole thing in 3A also.
Moving on to 4A, St. Lawrence advances the 12 seed. They will travel and take on DePaul Prep. That game is Saturday at noon. Dixon, 3 seed advances. They will travel down to Coal City on Saturday at 1 o'clock. Mount Zion, the 12 seed, they advance, taking on the 1 seed Breeze Central Saturday at 5. And then finally, Normal U High, the 10 seed, on the road at Cahokia Saturday at 2 o'clock. Matt, quickly, just some overviews on 4A.
Well, I think it'd be interesting to see who comes out on top. Normal U High or Cahokia, who's going to win? That's going to be a battle of some pretty high-profile football players and some speed.
Yeah, some pretty potent offenses too.
Pretty potent offenses, and I think in terms of the North, I think St. Lawrence right now is probably the team to beat. But it's going to be interesting. I just think this Mount Zion Breeze game, I think that's going to have a lot to say who's going to come out of the South. That 4A South, it's going to be interesting. And
then Dixon, as you know, I had a chance to see Dixon earlier this year.
Sorry.
They're the real deal. There's no doubt about
our semifinal games in 4A could maybe sneak up and be the talk of the four classes we've talked about. And I think our 4A game, the last one on Friday, might be our best game.
Yeah, there's a very much possibility that I was looking at that earlier today. All right, we're going to get into this. Your 4 quarters and overtime. So here we go. The theme, the book, Turkey on the Turf, Chapter 1, and we meet again. Fire away, Matt Leng.
So, and we meet again. And I think everybody in Leroy knows what I'm talking about. In 2003, the Leroy Panthers were on the turf at the University of Illinois. And it was B.J. Zalesnik going against Chuck Corty at the time. Chuck Corty was the co-head coach with Ed Freed. And in that game, at the end of the game, in a snowstorm, Galena ends up winning that game in a very controversial way. And I can tell you right now, we meet again and we meet again. If you don't think for a minute that is not in the back of B.J. Zalesnik's head, you're kidding yourself. This is a big, huge game. It's going to be a great matchup, and we meet again. The whole thing with Camp Point and Hardin Calhoun is they have switched around different guys, and different guys are playing in different positions. Brad has said this is going to be a big challenge to stop that fullback and that triple option offense that they have down there at Hardin Calhoun. Wow. And we meet again. You have 2 great matchups.
Chapter 2, the Trojan War. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I just think, when we look at 2A football, for the most part, it has been dominated by Maroa Forsyth, okay, to some extent, all right? Josh Joseph, he's 234 and 64. He's 70 and 26 in the playoffs,
Pretty good.
8 second places, 2 titles. Since 2012, He's been in the semifinals 7 times. To say that November's been a good month for Maroa is, I think Captain Obvious. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see if the Trojan War continues on, because they will have their biggest challenge of the year on Saturday against QND. And I think Jack Cornell and his group, they have something to say about that. I think it's one of the games you can circle, 1A through 8A, that's really worth talking about.
No doubt about. By the way, are we doing a no shave November? Or is that kind of what we both got going on here? You got a little bit of something going
trimmed
too.
up. We trimmed up.
Yeah. No, I will be.
I'm growing.
I'll be shaving this off. Otherwise, I look like Santa. It's not a good look. So, all right, chapter 3. To be the man. Well, Matt, we already know you're the man, but to be the man.
Well, to be the man, I got to hang out with the man, and you're the man, so whatever. So, hey, in chapter 3, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I think in Class 3A, we had that happen. I mean, if Montini wants to get to Turkey on the turf, they're going to have to beat Byron in a parking lot or at the shopping mall or wherever. And they did it on their turf, and they hung on for dear life. And everybody's seen that video, and everybody's seen how close Byron was to going back to the state championship once again. To beat Jeff Boyer and beat Byron, you had to do something awfully good. Kudos, tip your hat off to Montini. They did it. They beat the man. They beat the program. And I will just say, in the South, we have a colossal matchup that's ready to happen. If Scott Hamilton and Tolono Unity win and Coley Welder and Monticello win, that semifinal game will be in Monticello, and the whole town will be there from both towns that are like 15 miles apart. To be the man, you got to beat the man. It's going to happen.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And then finally, well, at least for chapter 4, Winds of Change. Is this going to be a Scorpions tribute, or what are you doing?
Oh, I don't know. Hey, I'm just saying we've got a lot of change.
Let me start whistling or no?
What's that?
If I could whistle, I'd start whistling Winds of Change, but I can't. So go ahead.
Hey, look, there's just a lot of change in 4A. There was no Sacred Heart Griffith. There's no Providence. There's no Richmond Burton. There's no IC. There's no Rochester. There's new blood in 4A. And I think it's a winds of change. Maybe could we see something coming up down the line in the future of some of these teams getting better? We're already seeing it with St. Lawrence. I think Brody Walworth at Normal U High has a say about this. And the guy at Mount Zion and the guy, Brian Short at Breeze Central, they've worked hard for this. I think we're seeing some things change in 4A.
Yeah, the one thing about 4A that I will tell you, and I saw this team earlier this year. Don't count the Paul Prep completely out of that game. They're a really good team in a program that really is on a roll. And I'll tell you what, even if they lose, they're going to give St. Lawrence everything they can handle.
All of their sports.
Yeah, 100%.
Basketball and volleyball. I mean, they're
rolling. They're rolling. There is no doubt about it. Did not play each other this year, which is interesting because generally you would think they would run into each other, but they haven't. So it's gonna make things very, very interesting in 4A. And that game in particular, I'm interested to see how it shakes out. And then finally, if I can find it, for some reason I lost your script here. 1 second. And then finally, in overtime and chapter 5, school spirit, my man.
Hey, as I'm decking out the orange and I got the Illini helmet, you just talk about, it's kind of fun. Sometimes you talk about the school nicknames, and in 1A, you got, 3 sets of Panthers. You got Falcons, you got Warriors, you got Crusaders, Pirates. In 2A, you got more of a medieval times theme. You got Knights and Trojans and Raiders, Indians, Blue Devils, and you just keep going and on and on. You get in 3A, it's Broncos and Tigers. 4A is kind of the Vikings age. It's kind of like you got your Kohlers and your Dukes and your Braves and your Pioneers and your Comanches. And I just think it's neat. You have all these different fan bases from different parts of the state, different playoff attire, school spirit. This is what we're doing it for. We're just out here to promote and talk about players and coaches and programs and towns. And I'm glad we have this platform to do it. And hopefully we're doing a good service.
Yep, no doubt. And again, appreciate everyone's support. Hey, we're over an hour, so we're going to keep this short and sweet here. But again, thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to Coach Mark Dodd for joining us tonight, and we'll be back. We'll be back next week. Man, I can't believe we're going to be talking about semifinals next week. That's crazy.
It's winding down, and there's going to be some great stories to talk about. Fingers crossed. Hope the weather holds out. That's what we're hoping for. So, all right, that'll do it. For Matt Leng, I'm EDGYTIM. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Go see a game, and we'll talk to you next week.